So, Zatch Bell 2 was announced just a couple days ago, and I'm still reeling from that announcement. We know that now, we just found out today, it's going to come out in about 2 weeks. And I said in my sort of first reaction video that I wanted to make another video discussing it and what I think about it, and this is that video. Zatch Bell is one of my favorite shows. It's one of the shows I have the most nostalgia for. It's one of the only shows that I would describe as like being my childhood, which is something that you hear a lot of people say about certain things. I still consider it a great piece of work, especially the later arcs of it, and I've made some lifelong friends through the forums for the card game that I've known for about 15 years now. So it's very important to me. That's enough about the original Zatch Bell. We're getting a sequel. And I guess what I wanted to talk about in this video is why are we getting a Zatch Bell sequel? And where could it go in terms of its plot and how it'll be made? And to start the discussion, I'm going to go into Zatch Bell's history in Japan, which a lot of you watching this will probably already know, so I'll get through it pretty quick, but suffice to say, Zatch Bell is a very successful franchise in Japan. There's a lot of love for it. I have often compared it in terms of level of popularity to a series like Hunter x Hunter, which is a series that a lot of people in the US know and love. So it sort of, I think, makes sense to compare it to Zatch Bell because people go, oh, so Zatch Bell is probably more popular than I thought if it's on the level of Hunter x Hunter. And I believe in Japan that it essentially is in terms of popularity. So the publishing company of Zatch Bell, Shogakukan, they lost Raiku's art, and he also broke his hand during arguing with his editor, which eventually led to Raiku suing Shogakukan after the end of Zatch Bell and sort of burning that bridge. And that's sort of important to know or to bring back up because of how Raiku is publishing this series. So after that, Raiku did 3 one-shots, and then he started his monthly series Animal Land. During the publication of Animal Land, or maybe shortly before, he did a Zatch Bell one-shot mini-sequel that was called Friends. Animal Land was a well-received series, and was also completed at 14 volumes, though it wasn't really as popular as Zatch Bell. It didn't get an anime, and Raiku did seem to be getting a little burned out, going by what he said in the bonus pages of the volumes of that series. So after Animal Land, a few years passed, he did another series called Vector Ball. Vector Ball showed signs of Raiku kind of getting more creative with it and that he maybe had some plans for it, but the series ended prematurely when Raiku turned down a deal to continue the series if he changed his direction. That was the deal he made with the publishers as editors. He originally took that deal, but then turned around within a day or two and said, you know what, no, I'm not going to compromise on what I want to do. I don't think he specifically said that in a statement, but that's sort of obviously what happened, and he decided, let's just end the series. So, I don't want to speculate on Raiku's mental state too much, that's something that I'm sort of going to end up doing in this video. And I also don't want to get too depressing, but, I think a few of Raiku's fans at this point, at least people that I talk to who are knowledgeable about sort of the scope of his career, sort of imagine that he was maybe burnt out or depressed by this point, that he hadn't been able to create another series on the level of Zatch Bell in terms of popularity, and that the daily grind of being a mangaka, even on a monthly manga, may have just been getting to him. We don't know what his feelings are, like I said, but it's important to sort of set the stage with just the fact that there was sort of a downturn in Raiku's career. I think we can say that for sure. There was a downturn, whether he was depressed about that, whether he took it in stride, doesn't really matter, because what's important is that downturn was largely related to his bad experience with the publisher on Zatch Bell, and Vector Ball, and then that grind of working on Animal Land. That's what's important to consider in terms of Zatch Bell 2. So, a couple years ago, just looking at my notes here, Raiku began republishing Zatch Bell with new bonus chapters called Gash Cafe. First, those were published as ebooks. Then those ebooks did really well, and they got physical editions, which are also doing really well. Continue to get reprinted. Zatch Bell, very popular in Japan. The series got a short-lived mobile game, actually a really good mobile game. Sadly, did not do too well. It closed in about a year. And more recently, it got a collaboration with an existing mobile game called Kotodaman. So Japan still loves Zatch Bell. So, now we come to now. Just a few weeks ago, Raiku announced the official establishment of his new studio, Bergden Board, which I think is named after a character or area or something from one of his original manga, even before Zatch Bell. This company name was something that he'd used in the newer volume releases of the series, similar to how Akira Toriyama has a Bird Studio. Hirohiko Araki has Lucky Land Communications when he does JoJo. Some mangakas sort of have company names for their business dealings, even if there is not necessarily an actual company with a CEO or various positions. And in Raiku's case, Bergden Board is now more than just him, but it is still, I believe, just a manga studio at present. It is his manga studio. It's him and his assistants. I believe on the website they've said in the future that they may eventually sort of find ways to help other mangaka or foster new careers or something, and that would be really cool and interesting if that was to happen. So, he started teasing a new manga by showing censored photos, blurred out photos of his workstation on Twitter. But all we knew at that point was that a new series was in production. So, I'm not sure if I'm going to talk about this later, but, it's kind of funny that I think a lot of us were hoping that it could be a Zatch Bell sequel. We were pointing to little things in these censored images and going, could that be? Could that be? Could that be? And I don't like doing stuff like that because, it gets your hopes up. It just seems silly to look at a blurred out image and go, you're just seeing what you want to see. But to have those thoughts and to, just a few days before the announcement go, I think this could be it. I think this could be Zatch Bell too. I just something about it. I just think it's time. And it was time. And it is time, which is what I'm about to explain, because I have seen quite a few people question why Zatch Bell needs a sequel. Both in terms of its own story, Zatch Bell had a great ending. Maybe we can just leave the characters where they are. Does it really need to be continued? And in a real world sense, this is an age where we have so many sequels, so many of them are useless, they're nostalgia bait. And how do we know this won't just be another cash-in? Maybe Raiku is still just burnt out, still just going to be doing that daily grind. The passion isn't going to be there anymore. I don't believe that any of that is going to be the case. But I have seen people pose those questions, so I want to talk about that. So, why can Zatch Bell have a sequel? If you're a fan of Zatch Bell, you likely totally think it can. But there are some fans who are questioning it. And you could say that the story of Zatch Bell is very open and shut in terms of the relationships between the characters. They sort of have full arcs. They say hello, they say goodbye at the end. It's over. However, there is sort of an intimation at the end of the series that Kyo and Zatch might meet each other again. And I think it's a good thing that Raiku put that in there. Because I think, there's a danger of saying, well, the ending of the series might lose sort of its potency, its emotional power if we see all the Momoto meeting their partners again after they've had these, beautiful, tearful goodbyes that the series is known for. If that happens in the new series, which I'm going to get to. But you can't say the seed for a sequel wasn't planted because Kyo did say, hey, we'll meet again someday, somehow. And beyond just that, there are a million possibilities for Zatch Bell's story. It's funny to see people act like there's just nothing you can do with the world of Zatch Bell. It's not as if the Momoto battle is the only interesting thing that can happen in this world. It's full of magic and all kinds of crazy stuff. Other dimensions. I mean, what can you do with that? In the one-shot Friends, Raiku introduced a magic wand that can negate Momoto magic. And imagine if that was introduced during the Zatch Bell series itself. Could have had a huge impact on the plot. So that's just something he threw in a one-shot. So clearly, he has ideas. He could introduce some other magical object or concept that will turn the Momoto battle, the Momoto world, or both sort of, upside down. Change things a lot. There's a lot we still don't know about the Momoto world. And, I don't know if Raiku knew much more about it than he wrote. in the original series, which is something I'm going to discuss in a little bit later. But after the last chapter, the bonus Gash Cafe chapter, after the last one, there is reason to think that whether he did before, he certainly has ideas about that now, about the Momoto world's past and the Momoto world's future. In terms of sequel fatigue, the possibility of the sequel being a cash-in, like I said, I think the time is right for a sequel. There are some sequels where you hear the announcement and you go, well, this just isn't needed. With Zatch Bell, I wanted a Zatch Bell sequel. It's been a long time since the original. It's had time to breathe. It's had time to kind of cement itself in the minds of the readers, and maybe not necessarily in pop culture, but they love it in Japan. And there's been no spin-offs that have run the story into the ground. There's been no Contra May spinoff where we see his own adventures and it's all this fan service and stuff. There's been nothing like that so far. So why not see all these characters again? What's wrong with seeing them again? We haven't gotten to see them again yet, aside from that one little sequel chapter. And simply wanting to see characters again shouldn't be the sole reason for wanting a sequel, because that's sort of could be the nostalgia talking, and then you get something that's just like trotting out these old characters and going, hey, you remember these guys, and hey, now they're going to say the things you remember them saying. Isn't that cool? But that's not the sole reason for bringing back the series. There's I think a lot of reasons to want to see a new Zatch Bell story, and there's a lot of things you could do with it. The question of Raiku's passion, once again, not a mind reader, but I don't believe there's any reason to think that Raiku is not passionate about this series. He's now sort of a free agent, and I think that must be very exciting for a mangaka who's sort of been under the thumb of publishers and editors his whole career. I actually predicted that Raiku would do this a few months ago. I'm not going to toot my own horn about it because, I think it was pretty obvious that was sort of what he would want to do. He stood up to Shogakukan in a way that not many mangaka could. A lot of other authors praised him during that lawsuit. So I think it was only a matter of time until the ecosystem, the industry sort of caught up to a point where, maybe Raiku wasn't the first to become sort of a free agent. But I think after seeing manga like One Punch Man that are published completely by the writer-author, as far as I know, there's no editor, there's freedom. Shonen Jump even has an online magazine that has different manga than the physical magazine, that apparently the authors have a lot more freedom to do what they want on there in terms of not only creative decisions, but also their schedules. All manga authors seem to generally be getting more relaxation time, more breaks, which I think is a great thing for them. I think they need that. So I think that Raiku noticed these changes happening in the industry, and he said, well, I want to do that. I want to be one of those guys that publishes online. And I want to say this is maybe one of the biggest examples of that happening. As far as I know, there's never been a manga that was published physically that had a sequel that was then published online. Not that I know of. Chainsaw Man is going to be an example, but that is also recent, and maybe doesn't have quite the longevity or the reputation that Zatch Bell does. So I think that, knowing all this, it makes me excited. If I were Raiku, I'd be excited. He's starting a new company. This seems like something that he really wants to do. He bought like a studio building and set up a whole place inside for people to work. If Zatch Bell 2 was just coming back in some other magazine, just promoted like any other manga, maybe I'd be a little less excited. I'd be a little less sure. But now, I'm not a mind reader, but I think that, not only does Raiku, is he stepping into this new era of his career that's different than it was before, but I think obviously he has a lot of love for these characters he created, more than we do, probably. Even more, somehow. And I'm sure he's excited to be striking out on his own. I mean, who wouldn't be? It's a new thing. Something it made me think of is the fourth Matrix movie, which, regardless of its quality, what happened with that movie was that the director Lana Wachowski, she didn't want to make another Matrix movie at first. But over the years, she sort of found her reasoning for wanting to do one. It's not a perfect example because the studio did sort of cajole her into doing one, but she still had a reason to do it eventually, which was a very personal, emotional reason to her. And with Raiku, there's no one cajoling him into doing this. you know, um, if Raiku had also maybe just jumped right into Zatch Bell 2 right after Vector Ball got canceled, I would say, well, oh, he's clearly just trying to get back on his feet, just trying to make some money, but that's not what's happening here. We've had a long time now since Vector Ball, and Raiku's had time to do whatever he wants, spend time with his family, whatever, and now we're getting his Zatch Bell 2. There's no reason to think that he is burnt out. There's no reason to think that those old wounds from the industry haven't healed. So, with all that said, now I can finally start talking about Zatch Bell 2 as much as I feel like I can, which isn't all that much, because we don't really know what's going to happen in this thing. Nothing I could say about this could really even be called speculation, because there's nothing to speculate about. There's nothing to base any sort of thoughts on. I like to speculate based on things that we see in teasers or whatnot, but all we have right now is a logo. I think the only thing we can be reasonably sure of based on that logo is that we're going to see Zatch again. He'll probably have a pretty sizable role if the series is still named after him, and everything else is up in the air. Throughout this video, I've kind of been acting like we'll see almost everyone again, but I don't really know if we will. I think personally that it's pretty likely. I think you can't really have Zatch without Kyo. I also think that even though it's the most obvious premise for a Zatch Bell sequel, just having another Momoto battle in the year 3000 isn't as interesting of an idea. It would still be interesting, but not as much as getting to see what everyone is up to after the original series. We're invested in these characters, and Raiku is too. I think he's going to want to write about them. So if there's nothing I can speculate on, well, what do I want to see personally? I want to see the Momoto world more, for sure. I want to learn more about it. I want to see the kids be a little older. I think it would be... it would be like watching real children grow up in a way. I think we've gotten to know these kids so well. To see them acting more mature and having moved on in their lives and taking control of their own lives, I think be a really wonderful thing to see. I think that 10 years would be a good time jump because it gives everyone time to really move on with their lives. It gives the human characters time to, cement their own lives, their own careers, maybe start families even. And it's not too short of a time where we can say, well, all those tearful goodbyes didn't mean anything because they just met each other again right after that, And the Momoto kids, it's been 10 years. They're only teenagers. Zatch is 16. Polygon is, 14? So I think that would work really well. Could be a little less, 7-8 years. I would love to see the humans come to the Momoto world. I think that's really fertile ground for some great adventures. And I hope the power levels aren't too crazy. I like to see sort of a scaling back to where we were, which I think I'm gonna revisit that in a little bit. But in talking about wanting to see the Momoto world, wanting to learn more about the Momoto world, I want to talk about that because when I do my own writing, I'm very focused on specifics, on facts, on histories, on questioning things and going, well, why does this happen? Does this make sense? And I really love works with complex worlds and histories. Zatch Bell isn't really one of those works, though, and I'm not really expecting to be going on a world tour of the Momoto world, getting a map of the Momoto world, learning about all the past kings and queens and whatnot. It doesn't really seem to be what Raiku enjoys writing, and I know that in the modern manga industry, you do see a lot more manga that have more complex world building, character histories, lore, that sort of thing. Back when Zatch Bell was made, you didn't see as much of that, and I just don't really see a reason why Raiku would change the way he writes to make a story like that. So I would caution against expecting something like that. However, if Raiku is trying to write maybe for the grown-up fans of the original series, a lot of us, as well as the new young fans that he is probably courting with this, we could get something that is a little meatier in terms of the lore and the history. We'll have to see what happens. And a totally insane thing that I've sort of been thinking about would be the possibility that he'll change the battle system. I don't want to start writing a plot for Zatch Bell 2, but in terms of, this is connected to what I said about how I hope the power levels aren't too crazy right from the start. I wonder if there could maybe be something that changes the magic of the Momono world in a fundamental way, so it has to be used in a different way. I think that would fix the issue of the characters being too strong from the start if there was a change like that. I think Raiku needs to have some way to resolve that issue, and that might be focusing on new characters to start with, bringing in the powerful characters, the powerful spells later, or if that's just bringing everyone that we love back but depowering them in some way, saying, well, you don't have as much magic now as you used to, or got taken away by a villain, or what. So those are the things I've been thinking about, and I'm not going to say I'm expecting any one thing. If the series isn't what I expect, and it focuses fully on new characters, if it's in the year 3000, whatever, I'm going to stan it just based on the strength of the last series until I have a reason not to, which is probably not going to happen. I'm going to love it for what it is, whatever it is. So before wrapping up, I want to talk about anime, because a reaction I've seen from several people on Twitter and YouTube is that the possibility of more anime is sort of the first thing that comes into their heads when they start talking about a Zatch Bell sequel. I've seen people talk about this announcement like it's something that could get us another anime, instead of its own thing, like it's some kind of stepping stone. I think I saw someone on YouTube say that an anime of Zatch Bell 2 is essentially a sure thing, which was odd to me. I love anime. I like manga more. I am a bit of a manga elitist, but, I think generally that's just not a good way to think of this one work that is going to be a full, beautiful thing with passion from multiple people. It's Raiku and his assistants put into it in its own way. That series isn't made with the intention of becoming an anime or of getting a new anime of the old series greenlit. It's not why it's being made. I understand the want for a new anime, because animes always get more hype from manga. They have bigger communities. There's a bigger sense that, wow, something's really happening. But for me, the announcement of a Zatch Bell 2 manga is just as good as the announcement of another anime. It's a fully new Zatch Bell story. It's not just an adaptation of the old one, which I would love to see, the final arcs get animated. But to have a fully new story is an incredible, incredible thing. And, I can't believe it. 3 days into this Zatch Bell 2 world where we are now living in, the Zatch Bell 2 universe. So I think it's all I have to say now. I tried to structure this sort of as much as I could and just kind of put some ideas out there. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on, well, of course, what could happen in the series, but also the other stuff I talked about. If you, what you think about Raiku striking out on his own. I think that's the way this series is published could make a really big splash in the manga industry. So I normally like to end my videos with like some sort of finality, and I don't like to just say see you next time, but this is sort of different because I can't really imagine that I won't be posting future videos on this series once it actually starts. I'd love to see Zatch tubers become like a real thing. There's a couple YouTubers that could definitely say they are Zatch tubers, but 2 is not a crowd, so I want more, and maybe I could be one. I don't know. I certainly have the name on YouTube for it. So I'm going to say keep an eye on this space if you want more videos like this, just discussing the series as it happens. Could consider doing chapter reactions. We'll see how the chapters are released, who decides to scan them. I don't know. There's a lot that's up in the air. However, I am super excited. Can't wait. We have about 2 weeks until it happens. We're going to be spending St. Patty's Day in the Momoto world, and I guess I'll see you there.